Good afternoon. I'd like to welcome everyone to the U.S. Embassy's Women's History Month and International Women's Day panel. I'm Master Sergeant Jennifer Lindner, the Operations Coordinator with the Defense Attaché Office at the Embassy, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies. I know how important cell phones are for students, but if everyone can please silence your cell phones now and not use them until the panel concludes, that would be great. We want to take the next 45 to 60 minutes to amplify the importance of empowering women and girls at home and abroad. This event will be pre-recorded and posted on the U.S. Embassy's Colonia Facebook. Women's History Month and International Women's Day offer an opportunity for the international community to reflect on progress made, recognize persistent challenges, and commemorate the cultural, political, and social economic achievements and contributions of women and girls in all their diversity everywhere. Today, Ambassador Carmen G. Cantor is our host and will be facilitating the panel questions and the audience Q&A. Ambassador Cantor is a career member of the U.S. government's Senior Executive Service. Previously, she served as Executive Director for the Bureaus of Education and Cultural Affairs and International Information Programs and Executive Director of the Bureau of Counterterrorism. Her 30-plus year career also includes positions at the U.S. Department of State, Foreign Agriculture Services, Federal Maritime Commission, and U.S. Postal Service. Ambassador Cantor received a certificate in International Migration Studies from Georgetown University, School of Continuing Studies, Master of Arts in Labor Relations from the Inter-American University of Puerto Rico, and a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology from the University of Puerto Rico, Mayaguez campus. She has attended executive courses at Harvard University's Kennedy School of Government, Cornell University, the Center for Creative Leadership, the Air War College, DoD Vanguards Program, and others. Thank you.
Hello. Now it's working. Thank you so much, Jen, for the kind introduction, and Kasalelie, and welcome to the U.S. Embassy's event in observance of Women's History Month and International Women's Day that we celebrate on March 8th. This year's theme for International Women's Day is #BreakTheBias. Bias has been an obstacle to women becoming empowered, overcoming false stereotypes, and achieving general equality. And we know from many studies how important women's success is for all general development. So we're going to ask our panelists to address these topics as they relate to the FSM and in their personal and professional experiences. After we hear from our accomplished panel, we will have time for questions from all of you. But before I introduce the panel members, I'd like to take a moment to recognize two special leaders who made outstanding contributions to the FSM, and regrettably, they are not with us any longer. I think it is very important for all of us to recognize their achievements. The first leader was Susana Sauce, a former president of the Pompeii Women Advisory Council, the umbrella organization for women groups here in Pompeii, with 20 groups and over 2,000 members. Mrs. Sauce was a passionate advocate on many issues concerning women and young girls, which included maternal depression, health, education, access to justice, and social issues. She was also involved in the passage of the Family Safety Act. Her death a few years back was a loss to the community, and we take a moment today to appreciate her great contributions to the FSM. The second leader was Kiki Stinnett, the president of the Chuk Women's Council, which through her leadership and advocacy worked to improve the lives of women in her state and in the FSM. Beginning in the 1980s, Ms. Stinnett developed the Chuk Women's Council into an organization that targeted a huge number of issues facing women, including family violence, women's health issues, prioritizing education, as well as providing training and development. Kiki's initiatives on behalf of women and her work towards conservation and climate change are recognized throughout the Micronesian region. Kiki passed away suddenly a few months back at the age of 66. I know her spirit and drive to support women was very special, and she will be sorely missed. I would like to ask all of us to observe a moment of silence in their memory. Thank you. Let me now introduce our panel members. Let me start with Yolanda Nampey, the principal of the Pompeii Catholic School. Prior to becoming the principal, Mrs. Nampey had many years of experience as a classroom teacher. She began her teaching career with the State of Hawaii Department of Education, where she served in special needs. Principal Nampey earned her Bachelor of Science in Education with dual certifications in elementary education and special education from Chaminade University in Honolulu, and her Master of Education from the University of Guam. Principal Nampey is married to Oliver Nampey Jr., and they have 3 children. Welcome. Our second panel member is Patterson Shedd. He is the regional coordinator for the USAID Climate Ready project since November of 2017. Previously, he was the national coordinator for the FSM Small Grants Program with the United Nations Development Program, and project manager for the FSM Integrated Water Resources and Management with the Secretariat of the Pacific Community and the FSM Department of Resources and Development. He was also executive director for the Conservation Society of Pompeii and a district-level rep in the Madeleine Municipal Government. Earlier, he served in the United States Army for 8 years and in many community-led services, which included the Pompeii Lions Club, a youth community-based organization, and the Micronesia Bound Incorporated in service for at-risk youth program. He is married to Mrs. Adeline Shedd, and she's here, and they have 3 sons. Welcome. We have Commander Thomas Price, the Defense Attaché at the United States Embassy here in the FSM. Prior to his current position, he managed defense relations with the FSM and the Republic of Palau, and served at the U.S. Military Assistance Group in the Philippines, and also at the U.S. Pacific Fleet Headquarters in Pearl Harbor. Commander Price received his Bachelor of Science degree in Cultural Anthropology from San Diego State University, and subsequently attended the U.S. Navy Officer Candidate School and was commissioned an ensign. And then he attended the Naval Postgraduate School and the Defense Language Institute, where he received his master's degree in National Security Affairs and Regional Studies, and a certification as an Indonesian linguist. Thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We have another panel member. She has not arrived yet. Her name is Delina Ems. As soon as she arrives, I will introduce her, but let's get started. As I mentioned before, this year's International Women's Day campaign theme is #BreakTheBias. When you all hear the theme, what does it mean to you? And I'm going to start with you, Principal Nampey.
Thank you, you, Ambassador. Before I answer that question, let me relay my respects to everyone who is here with us today. When I walked in here a few minutes ago, and I saw all the women and everyone that was among the crowd here, I was hesitant because I see many great women here, and I think this is what the theme is about. I need to break that bias. Why not me? Yes, there are many great women here that has done many great things, but breaking that bias is giving everyone a fair chance, an opportunity to share who they are, to celebrate who they are, to build a world that there is no separation, a world that is inclusive, that we can celebrate each other's differences. And that's what breaking the bias means to me.
Ambassador, I want to briefly say thank you for inviting me for this panel. There are so many other great people and charactered women that I respect in my community and on this island in this country that probably best sit here where I'm at, but I'm like her. I'm standing up a little bit with courage here to come and speak on a topic of import and as well as could be sensitive. So I thank you for inviting me, and I respect all the dignitaries that are here with us today. I can see many. I think of my community. So I'm from Metric, Matalilim, and Ponte. So when I think of breaking the bias, I think of my village, Metric. And to me, it's, respecting differences, building a community and a society and a country that is inclusive, equitable, and respecting the contributions of women, girls, and all genders really. But that's when I think of the word breaking bias.
Thank you. I'm gonna stop for a second. I would like to introduce our last panel member, and then we're gonna ask then, her and Commander Price the same question. Delina Ems, she is a professor at the College of Micronesia. She's the chairperson for the Social Sciences Division at COM. She has been working with the college for 13 years. She graduated from COM FSM with an Associate of Arts degree from the Health Career Opportunity Program, a Bachelor of Science in Psychology from Missouri Southern State University, and her Master of Science from Capella University in General Psychology. Professor Ames' experience extends to teaching research courses within the Micronesian Studies program and area curriculum development and research through programs titled Connecting the Moanas, Pacific History 2012, and Teaching Oceania 2016. So welcome so much. Well, we're very happy to have you here. And the question that we're answering already is, when you hear the theme for this year's International Women's Day, #BreakTheBias, what does it mean to you? So I'm going to ask Commander Price to answer the question, and then we'll pass the microphone to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming to this to our event. It's great to see so many folks here. For myself, breaking the bias. Get some feedback. I'll try to move away from the speaker a little bit. For me, breaking the bias is I really had to think a little bit about this question. Within the military, we do training after training after training to try and make sure we're doing the right level of opportunity, offering all of the right things. And it's really easy to try and spot bias outside of us. But the thing I wanted to really highlight with, when I think about breaking bias is really I have to stop and look into myself and see what it is that I'm doing. And That's gotten a lot more complicated the more senior I've become in the military. As you become one of the senior leaders, everyone starts looking to you more to not just follow the rules, but help implement them, and then even start writing the rules. So one of the things that I find myself having to do all the time with a variety of topics, and this one included, is to stop myself and think about why I'm making certain decisions. And so it's come in handy quite a number of times to be able to stop and go, am I providing the right opportunities for all of the sailors under my command? Am I offering everyone an equal opportunity? And so for me, breaking the bias is really remembering to stop as you're making some of the decisions and some of the assumptions that you're making, and do a little introspection, look into yourself and kind of question why you're making some of those decisions. So that's what it's about.
Thank you. Before I respond to that question, I would like to apologize for coming late today, and also pay my respect to the members of the Diplomatic Corps, all the representatives from government, GIAC, and church members, if they're here. My response to what I think about the theme for today's International Women's Day. When I read about the theme, the first thing that came to my mind was, I think it's a matter of perception on what we perceive or define to be bias. Because bias can be anywhere. Bias can be something that has to do with ethnic equalities, gender equalities, even gender equalities. I mean, talking from a perspective of a teacher, every day in our classrooms, we see bias. And these biases are not just of gender biases, but they're also of, if we think in terms of socio-economic class or statuses, there's also that bias. So again, it's a matter of how we perceive, and I really respect what was just shared a while ago, because it's also a matter of introspection. Sometimes we have to stop and evaluate ourselves and think about how we see not only the things around us, but how people interact around us and towards us. Because the ways in which we address these biases or these partialities, these inequalities are really dependent on how we judge, how we perceive, and how we choose to treat these inequalities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a perfect segue into the next question. How do you challenge gender stereotypes and biases in the FSM, and why is gender equality important? So I'm going to start back here again with Mrs. Nampay.
Thank you. So how do we challenge gender stereotypes and these biases in FSM? Although we have come a long way, challenging stereotypes and biases in the FSM is still a very hard thing, because some of them are still intentional and a lot of it is unconscious bias. I think that we have to challenge this stereotype or this bias by having an attitude that this is not just a matter of being a man or a woman or being from a different race, one race compared to another, but this is about human rights. Challenging these gender inequalities that we see today and all of these stereotypes is something that is far beyond gender. It is a human right, as I mentioned. And I think that our society, as members of the FSM, we need to see men and women as equals so we can have safer and healthier nation. And I say safer in the sense that maybe if we are challenged, or we challenge the people around us to see these equalities as something that is very serious. We can help prevent the violences against girls and women, and we can also promote our economic prosperity. I was talking to a friend, and I'm going to share something that she shared with me, which I really liked. We talked about this event that I will be part of, and she mentioned that if we see the FSM or whatever society we are part of as a bird, the man will be the left wing and the woman will be the right wing, or vice versa. We need both wings in order for us to soar. If one wing is handicapped, we will not be able to reach our destination as a nation. So it is very important for us to see each other not as competitors, but as partners in order for our society to grow. Thank you.
I see a lot of young people in the audience, so I'm going to speak to you for a bit here. As a father, I think what we say is very important as parents. So I would say, you know, parents in our audience and across our country, we need to think before we speak, you know, because every utterance of word can either build up a child or it can break down a child. And so it really starts way early at home. And so I think of my grandsons. Unfortunately, I don't have a granddaughter yet. But maybe on the horizon we will, Sandy and I probably will, with Lord's blessing. But that, you know, and the children are watching us parents, every action we do, especially our words, because we may not realize it, but we can either be lifting them up or bringing them down. And so I would say that's very important. And so I'm thinking about my own little kitchen and my family when I'm speaking here. Another thing is, traditionally, and I'm caught up in this, you know, I would think of my boys because I have all boys, and even the grandsons are all boys. So, you know, the tasking is like, you know, very manly kind of thinking in my family. And so when I think of, you know, as a father, I get caught up that, you know, oh, well, boys are, you know, don't belong around the kitchen to wash the dishes. But let me tell you, and my wife is here with me today, we share that task. If you're a man and you think you're, you know, beyond washing a dish, I think those are, because chores, you know, it has no gender. You know, it can go both ways. I can wash a dish, put on a rice in the rice cooker. That doesn't have to be just my wife doing that. And so I drill down on the simple things when I look at this question. It's not about, you know, young girls can plant yam. You know, I love planting yam. And so fathers, bring along the girls, get them dirty, you know, and be part of planting the yam or banana. Don't have that bias that, oh, girls only belong around the kitchen, because that's one way we can start breaking down bias at a very early age. So which brings me to my professional career. You know, Ambassador introduced me as the regional coordinator for the USA Climate Ready. And, you know, I choose to work in this project and support, because I really value what USA Climate Ready is about, building capacity across 11 Pacific countries. And for example, a lot of the capacity building programs that we support are largely male dominant. For example, project management resilience, procurement and supply, climate finance, project design, and asset management. You know, these are some of the capacity training programs that USA Climate Ready support. And so our team made it a very conscious thinking right from the start. And plus, it really helps because our team leader, his name is Trevor Hall. That guy, Strike, you know, always talk about how come there's less women attending this meeting or less women participating in these courses. So we got drilled as a team, members within our Climate Ready team, that we have to be conscious about that. I think we can project a level playing field in our work also, and keep the opportunity to women to excel and, you know, build their capacity. And to date, we've trained 1,100 women across the Pacific in these areas of studies and training that I just outlined a while ago. And I think that's absolutely breaking the bias and helping put women on the right course to compete in these key areas that are male dominant in field of studies. Why not? Women can do it, any of it. And look at Ana Mendiola, for example, in this audience. And there's so many, but I just want to pick on her for now. I probably pick on a lot more as I go along, but I'll let the next panel member speak.
Thank you so much, Patterson. Commander?
Okay, so, there we go. Oh, no problem, man. So for the FSM, when I think about the FSM, it reminds me a whole lot of my military career, in that I've always worked with small units and usually alone. And you know, that sets up a pretty difficult situation. So when I think of the FSM and the small islands and at times the isolation, it's very hard for remote locations to really develop. So I have a lot of respect for the FSM and the amount of work that is going into develop. And as a leader of small units, I was always finding myself in really remote locations with small groups of people. And you can never get by if you're not utilizing your whole team to its utmost potential. So the thing I would say that, you know, the importance of gender equality is, you know, number one, everything these days is getting more restrictive. The resources are less. The expertise is much more complicated and much more hard to come by. So you really have to make ultimate use of all of your team members. And as a military person, you know, it was really forced upon us to look hard when you're out in the field and you're away from everything. You have to rely on everyone, and so that's where I think FSM kind of mirrors that philosophy as well. As you move forward, traditional roles and things like that, you know, it's always important to remember traditions, but at the same time, as we modernize and everything comes, you know, the technologies get more complicated, everyone is undergoing change, and I think it's important that we keep everybody engaged, and to make it work, we have to keep everybody, give everybody that same opportunity to advance and show what they can do. So that's
Thank you.
I have so many things to say about this, but I'm just going to restrict it to, if I were to look from a Micronesian's lens, from a Micronesian's perspective, I would say that, you know, I would rather change the word challenge to learning. Why don't we learn from these challenges? Let this be a learning opportunity, given the stereotypes. You know, I remember that when I was a child, you know, many of the roles of men and women were clearly defined. There was a really clear line to what the men were responsible for, just as it was very clear to what the women's responsibilities were. But what I also saw as a child was, given these different roles, all these different roles complemented each other. There was a balance between the men's roles and the women's roles. I still remember when, when a house was being constructed, men had the physical strength to climb up the building being constructed. They would climb up the roof, whether it was a thatched roof or a more modernized type of roof. They did the climbing, they did the nailing, they did all the, the hard labor. But the women were also there, because if it was a woven roof, the women were responsible for blading the roofs. So men climbed up the completed roofs and they thatched it to that house. And this to my mind is still clear. And I'm still convinced that, if we relearn what our ancestors and our older parents and mothers did in the past, stereotypes would exist. But it's a matter of, again, I always say that, outcomes of what we do is mostly the result of the choices that we make. So if we, reflect on what was done, where it was never a question of, men were more superior than women, or women were less superior. It was mainly a matter of, keeping a balance, knowing where your boundary was, and also sharing these different roles that were so clearly defined between men and women. And I like the analogy that Mrs. Nanbe shared, Yolanda shared a while ago. She used the wings of a bird. But many would compare it to, since we're looking at a coconut leaf, the same concept can be also referred to a coconut leaf. A woman is that one side of the coconut leaf, just as the man is the other side. If one side of that coconut leaf is damaged or missing, then we have an incomplete coconut leaf. So, the reality is, it's sad to say that there will be stereotypes, but as men and women, as whatever different groups that we see as existing in our societies, it's a matter of learning from these things. And we've also chosen to be more modernized. So as traditional leaders, as mothers, as fathers, where do we fit in with our traditional roles as women? Do we adopt the changes that we're experiencing or seeing now? What will be my role as a mother? What will be my role as a father? Do I continue to say, this is my territory, I'm a man, this is what I should do, and that's it? You accept what I do? Because I also was raised, at a time, I was a child when parenting used to be done in a way where, especially your father, if he tells you what to do, you do it without question, because that's the authority. And especially girls in the family, they do without question. It's always the boys first, then the girls after, because there's so much what we call pel or wow to the male figures in our family. And it's part of our tradition, but it's also something that we value because it defines us as Micronesians. It also defines us as Pontians, I'm sure. But the question now is, if we choose to change, then how do we blend in the changes so that in a way we do not lose who we are? We have to keep a balance. And I think, I prefer the word balanced instead of equality. So there has to be a shared role to where, no one is more dominant than the other, but all members of a family, especially the wife and the husband, have an understanding that roles are shared and that they're modeling how these roles are shared to their children, especially if we're modeling as the older members of our lineage, our clan or family, and especially to our nuclear families. We have to model if we choose to change so that we can learn from these challenges. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Before I ask the next question to the panel, I want to ask all of you to start thinking about potential questions that you may have, because after this question, we're gonna open it up for all of you. McLean, I don't know where she's at, but okay, there's McLean. She's gonna have this microphone and she's gonna go to you to get your question in a few minutes. Thank you, McLean. A critical aspect of promoting gender equality is the empowerment of women. I personally strongly believe that men have a very important role in achieving gender equality or balance, as Delina said, and promoting women empowerment initiatives. Men as an ally can be role models, and that's the reason why I wanted to have male panel members in this event. Usually you go to these events and it's a women's event and everybody's a woman. No, we need to have the men here as well. So I want to ask everyone here, the panel members, in your opinion, what specific steps men can take here in the FSM to elevate women's access to employment and appropriate working conditions? So I'm going to start with Patterson and then Commander Price and then go to Ms. Nampe and Delina.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think men is your best ally, woman. Don't go without us, and so, I have a few enumerated bullets, and I'm not saying that none of these are already ongoing, but I just want to echo many of these, because these are, in my personal opinion, as a man, and how men can support women, protect and advance in this important area of equality and inclusiveness and respecting women inputs. I would say, men can be your best ally, and I started a while ago on my professional career work that I just shared a while ago. Men has to have a conscious, in their thinking, like when we're designing support or programs, and man is at the top of that decision. I implore all men to really think carefully about, not to say, that's a male-dominant area, we're gonna, just focus on the guys, but keep women a chance. And I think that applies to training, economic, everything, have women input into those discussions and those decisions and career paths. Help them advance. I think I would say that what men can do for women. And I think there's many examples out there, organizations out there. When I think of this, I think of one organization here in the FSM that really exemplified that. If you walk into their office, it's dominated by female women, and that's Micronesia Conservation Trust. I think what Willie's doing there is awesome. He's really building the capacity of women, and they're not just staff or secretaries or anything like that. They're team leaders who are running very complicated, project development, project management. Ana Mendiola is on their board, and I think they're conscious. That's not accident. I think that's an organization that's very conscious about building up women, and so I commend them. And there's probably many out there, but for now, for time's sake, I want to put a concrete example of how one organization that I see doing that. When we're in a position, man, and we're going to hire employees, and don't just be satisfied that, this is the first batch that came in and there's no woman, I'm going to just proceed with my selection process. I think as leaders, you could pause that process and say, let's reopen, or let's ensure that there's, good candidates from the women are in that, so that they can be at least fairly and be inclusive in that process of selection. I think those are simple things that men leaders can do and be conscious about. Promote gender equality in the workforce. Be a leader that are really conscious about that. And I think one of the great things that I've seen in our country, and I commend the President and Congress for doing that, the recent passing of Public Law number 2261 on maternity leave, which expanded to 8 weeks. That's great, but that's only applies to the national government employees, unless I can be corrected on that. But when I read the communication coming out of President's office, it seems to just limit it to the national government. And I would also challenge corporations, private sector, and state governments to look at that and widen it, expand it to other women that are employed by the government or private sector. Because, you know, as a father, I felt, you know, when my wife had our 3 boys, she wasn't working then, but if she was working, it would be quite a tough challenge. And so 8 weeks of break, kindness from the government and respect to women, that will quite make a long way for women in the progress toward breaking bias.
Thank you. Commander?
Okay, so for this one, again, the thing I would start out with for males as they try to come to grips with some of the issues around gender equality is, I would say, you know, the first thing is when you're going through your daily routines, your daily life, and you see what could be bias, definitely speak out on it. So be an advocate, you know, help correct the problems when you see it. Equally important, like I said in the beginning, was also take a look inside and see if you're following what your values, you know, that you're trying to project out. I think with in today's world, it's really easy to point the finger and go, you are being discriminatory, which we definitely have to keep those things going, you know, to make sure that we're stopping it where it happens. But the first place to start it is within yourself. So I would say, you know, look inward, make sure that you're living up to the values that you believe in. You know, advocate for those around you who maybe are a little bit more afraid to speak up. But then also participate. I think, like you're saying, ma'am, which is these events are normally only attended by women, and I think it's important for men to take part in not just the celebratory events, or, you know, these panels are important, but also just every day at your work or your school is making sure that, you know, you're giving everybody that fair shot.
So what can men do? They've done so much. I just have to share this. But last Friday, I was at an event. I was also invited to do a presentation. For last week was Early Childhood Education Week. So on Friday, the main event was ongoing, and I was invited to be a speaker there. But anyways, I looked down the crowd, and in that crowd, I think less than 5% of the crowd were men. Yesterday, I also went with my daughter to a speech contest. Mrs. Nante was there, and principal of CCA. But I didn't even notice it. I was sitting next to Mr. Ricky Adams, and he turned to me and he said, "How come there's only 2 boys among those contestants?" And I looked up and I said, "So what is that telling you?" So he turned to me and he said, "It's you there. You know, my parents won't have the money. So, you know, being strong and determined, I looked for, you know, scholarship opportunities." So it is true that education is very important, but foundational to achieving whatever goals you've set, we need to be strong women, and men need to be stronger men so that they can support us. Thank you.
Any other questions from the audience? Okay, we have McLean, we have this lady here. Okay, she went down. We're gonna go with her and then go to her first and then the lady here in the first row.
My name is Stansley Daniel. I'm a senior from NMHS. And my question is, what can we all do to create a more diverse leadership?
Thank you so much. Who would like to answer the question? You get it? Okay.
So for the place I would say that we start is the existing leaders, number one, have to recognize that everyone's got to be replaced at some point. And so within the military, we are constantly looking at junior people, and we're trying to identify all of the talent, and then we start getting the right training and opportunities in place for that person to help lift them up. So I would say that for all the current leaders, it's important to look and see who that next group of people that will come up and lead the country or the unit or what have you, and build those folks up. And always keep in mind to keep those opportunities open. Related to some of the other questions about strength or confidence, which is, I would definitely agree with you, ma'am. Confidence, change will not happen if you're not daring, if you're not strong. And so that's where even if the existing leaders aren't supportive of change, that's where the folks that are coming up, they have to insist upon it. So.
Thank you.
I have a quick comment. I was traveling with the president and YAP this week, and he commented that 2 girls on that island told him that they were going to be president. I think that's a challenge to the girls here. Are you going to let YAP outdo you? Maybe we have some presidents here in this group.
Thank you. This is Ben Deal, our new Deputy Chief of Mission here at the embassy. So there is a challenge for the girls here in Pompeii. All right.
Thank you, Madam Ambassador, panelists. Ay jumawag ang kapuran korusya na katranwat melel hiray maglubulkan. Yes, I do believe education is very important, so I'd like to share what I tried to do 7 years back. I tried to attend all the elementary school in one municipality and then all the way to high school. Graduation from the elementary level, valedictorian, salutatorian, are all girls. And then up to high school level, few boys, but mostly still majority is girls, high school level. And I tried to track them through. I lost many of them at the high school level. And then at the college, I found couple, but then I also lost them. So I went back to the education part, asked them, what happened to those? And then we look at this record statistics. Dropout at the high school level was high. So I wanted to find out what were the causes or purpose of the dropout. And that's one area I had a problem. There's no recorded purpose of the dropout. But I know some of them maybe got pregnant, right? I know maybe some of them have to go back home because mother is sick or father is sick. But then at the college, I found 2, and then they went down to the Pacific, South Pacific University, and then they came back to Pompeii. And when I saw them back, I was so happy, and I said, I saw you 9 years back, and now you're back to Pompeii. One challenge even still, when they got employed, at the government. Their salary is lower than those men who were there before them. The question is, why is this happening? Maybe you can help me. But that's one area it's still bothering me. So young girls and boys, especially girls, don't get pregnant early. On and on and on, no limit. Sky is the limit. So thank you. Thank you.
Okay, we are almost at the end of the panel, but we're going to be here for a little while to answer questions, informally. What I would like to do is ask the panel members, and I'm going to be very strict with this, in 30 seconds or less, any final piece of advice each of you can give to our participants. So, who would like to start? Any piece of advice? 30 seconds. I will.
My advice to young men and women today, we will always have our differences. So my advice to you today would be embrace and appreciate those differences. We need to still share the differences that we have, but always embrace those differences. We need men, their physical strength, just as we need the emotional strength and the mental strength of women. So with these two strengths, we need to embrace, but we also need to share them so that we can make a collective benefit to our growing society. Thank you.
Thank you, Delina.
Okay, 30 seconds less. I'll say to the boys and the men in the audience, I would say give them a chance. It's a pretty simple thing to do. From my own personal experience in some very difficult situations, I've always been pleasantly surprised, and when the chips are down, I have to rely on my full team, and that's what I would say is for men and boys, pause, take a look at what you're doing, and utilize your team to the best of their ability, which I think is going to level the playing field. I think what I've found is when I do that, I really don't have to worry too much because the playing field becomes level at that point if you take the time to really look at strengths.
Thank you. 30 seconds.
Did I talk too much here? Okay. We should be in it together, both men and women, if we are to advance both. And so, it's not one trying to overpower the other, but I think that's the message I want to bring to us today. And while we're doing it, I want to caution us too, that we don't try to burn down our societal norms and culture and, unique Micronesian heritage by in the name of advancement. Because we're unique, we're a group of excellent, awesome Micronesians. And so that's what I wanted to keep an advice on. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry.
So what I would like to share is woman to woman, girl to girl, man to man, boys to men, and person to person. Be kind and encourage each other to do better, choose better, and accept better for ourselves. Why? Because we all deserve it. Being loyal and honorable goes beyond gender. It makes us better human beings. Thank you.
Can I ask everyone to give the panel a round of applause? I think they did a wonderful job. Before I turn this over back to Sergeant Lindner, I would like to leave all of you with a few thoughts on how we can continue to break the bias and empower women and girls. These are little things that we all can do, and some of the panel members have already mentioned some of these that I'm going to say. The first one is
Boost girls and women's self-esteem. Do what you can to do. Shut down negativity. Patterson, you talked about that a few minutes ago. Be open and honest. Advocate for female colleagues. Lead by example. Become a mentor. We didn't talk about mentoring today, but that's really important. Support women-run businesses. Fight against injustice. Show your appreciation for the woman in your life. Patterson, again, he did it a couple of times here today. Try to keep girls in school and encourage and support them. Ask them to go to college. See what you can do to send them to college. Support organizations that empower women, and like Ms. Nampey said, remember to be respectful at all times. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sergeant Lindner. Thank you so much again.
Senator, I heard that you had a question?
If I may. Actually, it's not really a question, but a statement to address the issue of bias, and specifically to address the issue of what the young girl from NMHS brought up, leadership in diversity of leadership. I think, anyway, my name is Heraldine Movic. I'm a senator, Pohnpei State Legislature, and I represent Kitty Municipality. I think what I wanted to sort of say a bit about is, if there is anything about bias that we should know, Senator Ludwig and I know that very well. In the legislature, there were 23 members, and we only have 3 women that should address your issue of diversity. And, every day it's a challenge for us. I think last year, I was a panelist. We discussed gender equality, issues on women's rights that should be addressed at the legislative level. We still have them sitting in front of us in the legislature, getting closer to being addressed, but it really is a challenge getting there. We actually had a proposed legislation that was done before the Congress had theirs. Congress passed theirs, we're still trying to get ours passed through the legislature. So today, because there are more young women here, and women, I think the same enthusiasm that the woman who gave on the day we passed the International Women's Day as a holiday, we think should be put into passing those laws that actually gives us women the rights to be what we are. I have a couple of notes here. Still, as a woman senator, we still get treated very differently from men. When we go out in public, sometimes when we're by ourselves, we don't get recognized. When we're with the men, they get recognized first. So, tell me that's not bias. And what Mrs. Walter brought up about salary disparity between men and women. And it goes back to all of these laws that we are trying to pass to give women, the opportunity and the same opportunity as men to be at the same salary level when you're at the same level of job. It's still sitting there. And that's what bothers us more. Because even though Miss Yamada here, Principal Yamada said she has a very supportive husband. I have a very supportive husband. But it doesn't translate into the things we want collectively as women. You know, confidence is one thing to have, but principle is another thing. You can have all the confidence, but if you don't have the principle to stand up to what you believe in, it will not happen. All the roles that we play in the legislature can only be done if we work with the men. And so the complementary of our roles to men in that regard is very important. We have, as women, we have to conduct ourselves so that we get respect, and respect in return from the men. We push, but we can't be too aggressive, because we need them to understand that we want their respect in return for ours, or they want ours in return for theirs. So, you know, there's a lot of times when sitting in session, you just want to throw your hands up in the air and you want to say some kind of words that's not appropriate. But we have to be patient, and we have to conduct ourselves in a manner that would allow those men to understand our points of views and support us in that regard. So I brought this up because when she said, when Miss Daniel said, you know, diversity in leadership, I forgot the sergeant, or anyway, you said that, you know, you have the opportunity to vote. Election comes around every 4 years for us, you know, and when you're getting closer to election, your families who vote, tell them, this is what we need our leaders to be doing for us. We want them to be putting in laws what is good for all of us, what is not only good for some people. Because we're going to be thinking, all of us here, last year I made that statement, all of us here, we're all empowered. But who has a voice for those people who don't? We still have to think about our families, our sisters, our brothers, cousins, who stay out in the municipalities, they don't go to school. They don't have the same opportunity we do. And someone has to stand up for them. Thank you.
Senator, thank you so much for your comments. Senator, we had a similar panel about, actually it was almost 2 years ago, believe it or not, for Women's Equality Day, and yes, there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and you know, we at the U.S. Embassy, and I know that many of the organizations that are represented here, you know, we're all willing to sit down and see what we can do together. I know that in the U.S. government, when we talk about equality, pay equality, you know, we're very blessed that in the U.S. government, everybody earns the same regardless of the sex, but I know that in countries like here and others, they don't have the same benefits. So let's talk some more and let's see what we can do. Over to Sergeant Lindner, and again, we can continue having these conversations after the panel. We're going to be around for a little bit and we're going to have some refreshments. So over to you, Sergeant.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you all for participating. The panel members will be here for a little while longer. Please feel free to continue this conversation with them and others over some refreshment in the sunroom. And make sure to check out our Facebook page to see photos about today's events and to listen to American Waves, the Embassy's weekly radio show for news and information. Kalangan, thank you.